Hello everyone, Interact back here with something a little bit different. I wanted to rank all the killers on a tier list since that seems to be a pretty hot trend, and we're just waiting to see how the Trickster turns out. So let's just jump right into it with the first killer, the Trapper. Honestly, I think the Trapper is pretty strong, but he could use a few buffs here and there. Having to go around and pick up his traps around the map is kind of lame, but his ability to cut off windows and loops with his traps is pretty insane. I think he would be perfectly balanced if he could just have like an infinite amount of traps, but you had to reload them at lockers or something and you could only carry like 3 at a time. Trapper for me is pretty much A tier. Really strong, but could use a few buffs here and there to really make him S tier. Next up is the WRAITH. I do like that you move really fast when you're in your invisibility mode and the survivors just can't see you. But I don't like that they can hear your bell, which kind of gives you away when you're uncloaking or recloaking, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of being invisible, I think. They should pretty much just make a silent bell add-on baseline and then he'd be a lot better. Other than that though, he pretty much has everything you want. He's got speed, he's got stealth, and survivors just can't see him. So he's easily in the S tier, probably in the top 3 of like all the killers in the game right now. Next we have the Hillbilly. I'm conflicted on the Hillbilly because he used to be one of the best killers in the game with his Instasaw add-ons, but then they nerfed him into the ground by just removing his best add-ons and making some stupid overheating mechanic so you can't even use your saw all the time just to rub salt in the wounds. Honestly, I feel like Billy is kind of like middle of the road C tier now. He used to be so good, I wish they would just revert his changes and make him back into the good killer that he used to be. Next up is the Nurse. I know a lot of people think she's like the best killer in the game for some reason, but I just don't understand why. She's the slowest killer in the game, which means that if you aren't any good at using her power, which is really hard to use, you're just going to lose. In terms of actually using her power, you're pretty much required to always have the plaid flannel so you know where you're actually going to land your blinks, which basically means you're only ever allowed to equip one add-on, and her add-ons aren't even that great. I'm sure you could be good with her if you spent like 10,000 hours practicing her, but I just don't think that she's that strong for a normal player, and I don't have that kind of time. I'm going to put her in the D tier because she does have some potential, if you have no life and you can practice for like 10,000 hours or whatever. Following up on that shit show, we have the Huntress. Huntress I think is a lot like Nurse, where unless you're spending half your life practicing her, you aren't really going to be able to do all that much. You're slower, you're only a 110% killer, which means you're going to get looped really easily, and you're pretty much required to download an external program just to have a crosshair because the devs can't just be bothered to add one into the game. Next up is the man himself, Michael Myers. Myers is an interesting one, but I think he's pretty solid, honestly. He does have like a little bit of ramp up time with the stalking, but once you get to tier 3, especially if you're using the very rare add-on that increases the time of tier 3, you can just go on a downing spree and win the game really easily. That plus his stealth in lower tiers, making it so it's really hard to see him when he's stalking you, makes him really solid. There's a reason that he was played and banned a lot in the recent Japanese tournament. He's A tier for sure. So I guess we have to talk about Hag. Once again, she just suffers from like having too much setup time, and she's 110% speed, which means you're going to get looped really easily. All that, plus the fact that she has a limited range on her traps to teleport to, and they can be destroyed by the most common toxic survivor item, flashlights, just makes her not that good. I think she's probably D tier at best. Now we get to the Doctor. The Doctor, oh man, really strong killer. Built-in slowdown, really good tracking with his power. You can easily stop toxic loops since all you have to do is just shock them and they can never use pallets or windows. And once you get them into tier 3, they have to just snap out of it, which means that they can't spend any time healing themselves or working on generators. Easily just one of the best killers in the game since survivors just straight up can't loop you with pallets or windows. S tier, like top of the S tier for sure, easily. Then we get to Leatherface. I think Leatherface is just a better hillbilly since he can down multiple survivors at once with his chainsaw. It sucks that they removed like his best ability in his rework, which was just revving the chainsaw to max and face camping and waiting for toxic survivors to try and save in front of you. But even that said, he's still really strong. I think nerfing his face camping ability was a bit too much in my opinion, but I'm still going to put him in the A tier because he still can down multiple survivors with a single chainsaw. Next up is Freddy. Freddy's a bit controversial since they nerfed him so hard with his rework. I do like his new Dream Pallets power though. It kind of sucks that you have to use an add-on for it, but it does counter toxic looping survivors really well, since you can just slap them with his extended lunge range when they go to pallet stun you, and the pallet doesn't work because it's a Dream Pallet. As long as you're using the add-ons for the Dream Pallets, he's A tier. With snares, he's maybe like a C or a D tier. Just make sure you're running the Dream Pallets add-on if you want to get the best usage out of Freddy. Now we get to talk about the pig. The pig has the highest kill rate in the game. I'm not even joking. Ask Behavior if you want the stats to back that one up. Easily S tier. Next up is my man, the clown. I like his buff, but I'm not really sure that it was enough. He's still really good at stopping toxic looping survivors by making them drop pallets really quickly, and then they don't have pallets to work with later on in the game. But I think they probably should have just like given him unlimited bottles and removed the reload mechanic entirely. It's really boring and slow. He's probably B tier now they buffed him a little bit though. Next up is Spirit. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but 110% killers are just plain awful. And you can't even see survivors while you're using the Spirit's power that just makes her move at like an actual decent speed. What was Behavior thinking when they made this killer? She's so horrible, it's just laughable. Easily F tier. Next up is Legion. Oh man, Legion. Where do I even start with the Legion? You get to move super fast, you get to waste survivors' time by stabbing them and making them mend themselves, and you can just keep stabbing them forever and they'll never be able to work on a generator. Plus you can vault over pallets, which no other killer is even allowed to do. Easily S tier, one of the best killers in the game in my opinion. Now we get to the Plague. The Plague is pretty bad. You have to puke so much on a survivor just to injure them when you could just hit them with a mouse 1 attack, and it's kind of hard to aim the vomit because it does the weird, like, it arcs really weirdly. Maybe if your power was always Corrupt Purge, she might be decent. But you have to run all the way across the map when a survivor cleanses just to get Corrupt Purge. And then it barely lasts for any amount of time, and you lose it when you get stunned. Behavior really needs to buff some of these killers, or otherwise people are just going to quit the game. She's probably C tier. Next up is Ghostface. Ghostface is just Myers without the snowball potential. Leaning is so broken and Behavior still hasn't fixed it. Thankfully, no survivors seem to really understand how to break you out of Night Shroud, so you can have a decent stealth game. I think Ghostface should be able to stalk faster without having to use the stupid leaning mechanic since it is just so broken. As it stands right now, he's probably B tier though, since his stealth is really good. Once survivors learn how to look at you to break you out of the power though, I don't think he's going to be that good anymore and he'll probably be like D tier. Next up is Demogorgon. Demogorgon has the potential to be strong, but his portals just take so long to set up, and survivors can destroy them once you've used them, and they get a global sound notification whenever you use one. I just don't understand why Behavior can't make a good killer nowadays. It's getting kind of crazy at this point. I'm just going to put him in the D tier and move on. The next killer they made is the Oni. I mean, he doesn't even have a power until you've hit survivors twice. And once you get your power, you can barely move around because your turn speed is so messed up, and you can barely turn it all when you swing. I'm not going to even waste time talking about him, he's D tier. Next up is Deathslinger. I don't know why his gun just doesn't do like a health state of damage when you shoot them, but whatever. I guess if you're really good at playing FPS, you can do well with him, but otherwise you're just never going to be able to land a shot. And while you're trying to line up your shot, Behavior made it so you move even slower than normal. Really poorly designed killer. Thanks again, Behavior. D tier. Now we get to Pyramid Head. Once again, Behavior comes out with a killer where the survivors can just avoid your power entirely by crouching. Sure, you get to leave your trail of torments all over the map, but survivors can just crouch and not get affected by it at all, so you never get to send them to cages. I really hope Behavior makes a good killer one of these days. I'm getting really sick of it, and I swear I'm going to quit. D tier. And the latest killer that they've come out with is the Blight. The Blight is kind of weird though. I don't really understand what they were thinking when they made him. Like, yeah, I get it. You get a really fast dash, but you can't even attack during it? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? It's nice to be able to move like a little bit of distance really quickly, but then you have a cooldown where you have to inject yourself and you don't even get to gain much distance and you can't even attack while you're doing it? Why would they make a killer this stupid? F tier. Alright, and that's all for the killers of this game on the tier list, at least until the Trickster comes out and I figure out where to put him on the tier list next. So, feel free to smash the like button. Obviously, subscribe for more in the future. I make content daily, and it's really great content. Hit the bell to get notified for more uploads. As I said, uploads daily. I'll have more cool videos like this, more cool montages coming out later, and cool tips and tricks guides. So I'll see you in the next one, guys. Remember to smash the like button. Bye.